top 10 Microsoft licensing mistakes that can cost you dearly. I think I need, after we created this presentation, I thought I should probably rename it into top 10 Microsoft license management mistakes, because licensing doesn't exist in its own kind of bubble, just licensing, because you also buy licenses, sell licenses, you renew licenses, you negotiate licenses, you negotiate contracts. So the money losing mistakes, they happen in various areas of Microsoft license management. And we actually, so we did it together with Daryl. So I sent him my list of ideas. He sent back his own. We were struggling to actually pick up the top 10, which happen most frequently and cost the biggest amount of money, but we've managed to do so. So yeah, please bear with us. And you know what? I will probably start with this slide, which I called Microsoft losses bingo, but it's not only related to Microsoft. You can see it's probably can be related to any other software vendor here. So you can have all kinds of losses of money, inefficiencies, which is what procurement is all about: efficiency, savings, cost cutting. But also you get stuff like audit penalties. You can't dismiss them. There's also risk management, and that's not recognized by procurement usually. Should be, but it's not. It's recognized by other people, risk managers. It's also a big deal. Not as a big deal as with, say, Oracle, but Microsoft still do audits in certain areas, certain countries, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Right now, the activity is shifted towards services provider licensing agreements, service providers. But you never know. They may come back one day and start, auditing customers again. And usually with Microsoft, you don't, recently at least, you don't really pay penalties. They talk about commercial resolutions. What does it mean? You still need to pay something, just differently. Maybe buy a new product that you still don't need, and it'll be sitting there, being shelfware, wasting your money. It'll be something else. The other type of losses that could occur is future costs. It is something that you just got as a concession, something nice, something with a great discount. You're not getting that discount in 3 years. You won't. You don't even dream about that. That's not going to happen. So missed opportunities, obviously, as well. So we'll touch on that. It's easier to understand when you have an example. And the reasons may be different. It could be human error. I think the biggest reason is licensing complexity. We had this discussion today. This fantastic phrase: vendors prey on complexity of licensing, and customers not knowing how to properly license the products. You don't need to target. There's no level playing field. Dodgy sales tactics because of that as well. So honestly, if somebody is in sales, you have to understand that they're not necessarily dodgy. But if there's a choice between selling you less and selling you more, guess what they're going to choose? So you have to be vigilant, even if that's something with whom you maintain really good relationship. If there's an LSP, there's a services provider, double check, look for interpretations, ask someone who's independent, who's not interested in selling you, whose only goal is to keep your costs under control, contained. Process gaps.
Alex, I'd actually add on to that that there is a huge knowledge gap within the resellers and within Microsoft these days with all things to do with licensing. And that knowledge gap causes people to say anything the customer wants to hear. So many times, because they don't know licensing, they haven't got that knowledge, they say, I'm going to be blunt, I think you know me, they say bullshit. And they cause more confusion. And they say things that are just meant to sell you additional licenses without understanding the underlying long-term ramifications. So even if these are really nice people out there you're dealing with, you need to understand that they don't have that licensing knowledge that you might think they have because they work for a Microsoft reseller or they work for Microsoft. So it's always up to you to go out there and validate that information. Don't take it for granted that they know what they're saying.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the reason, by the way, we kept the the question marks here is because there may be other reasons. But we'll play this. We'll play this. Mistake bingo after each case, after each one of the top 10 Microsoft licensing management mistakes. And I'll start with the one that is it's really pain to see. It's really pain to see. And let me explain what we're talking about first, then we'll talk about the reasons, and then we'll talk about how you overcome this. I have a dedicated video I recorded a couple of weeks ago on this channel. I think it's called something, Don't Make That Mistake, connected with the enterprise agreement. So just watch it, please. Enterprise agreement, its fundamental rule is you have to standardize on something. Otherwise, you just won't be able to sign it. So you have to commit. You have to promise to Microsoft, I will cover all my users or all my devices. So you choose what type of commitment you take. Users or devices, depends on the product. Some products like Office 365, you can only choose to license every user with a certain flavor of Office 365. You still commit. You still promise, I'm going to buy every license through that channel. On the server side, you promise to Microsoft, I'm going to say you decided to standardize on Windows Server. Core Infrastructure Server Suite, by the way, not Windows Server. You promised Microsoft, I'm going to cover all my estate with Core Infrastructure Server licenses through the enterprise agreement. Okay, fine. You shake hands, you put your signature, and you need then to follow that commitment. Nobody's going to stop your orders if you decide to buy something outside of this channel. So say you promise to Microsoft to license every single Windows server. They give you discount in return, every Windows server with this Core Infrastructure Server license. And then somebody from your organization, maybe from some remote location or from a separate team that have their own software budget, they go ahead and buy licenses from the same reseller. The same reseller might probably stop that purchase. Not always. I've had stories when people were able to buy stuff and the reseller knew they cannot use it. They still sold it to them because what? Guess what? It's sales. You get your profits. So somebody goes ahead and buys licenses outside of that commitment through another channel. What happens is then you paid that money, you get the licenses. So you have we'll talk about how we can fix that. You get the licenses, and then you cannot use them. It's crazy. You still have to. So you bought, say, 100 servers for a remote location, new data center. Bought 100 servers. Then you went ahead and bought 100. So the number of licenses required for that 100 servers, but not through EA. You still have to go buy them through EA. So you have to pay twice. So those first licenses are lost. Happens all the time. The bigger the company is, the more outsourced stuff is, the more disconnected the procurement process is. My biggest advice to avoid this, how to prevent this from happening, centralize purchases. Everything must go through the central channel. Even if you give purchasing powers to branches, to your subsidiaries, to your offices, to your remote locations, you need a centralized approval. Somebody to tick box and say, that's a correct one. You can also agree with your reseller that they will stop such purchases. If you live in a civilized country, that's easy to agree. But what happens if they go to a different reseller? They might not know that you have an enterprise agreement, and they don't care. They don't care.
Alex, I want to challenge you. On this one. So just say I do go out there. I'm a global company, and I go out, and some subsidiary out there goes and buys servers, even though I have an EA, they buy it under a CSP. When will Microsoft actually realize that this mistake was made? Who's even going to notice it?
Nobody in Microsoft is going to notice it. Microsoft don't have any controls in place. Nobody in Microsoft receives an alert to say company A purchased licenses outside of their EA. They don't have that facility. Why would they have it? That's
So
my
only
question. Why?
if you
What's
audit
the
it.
incentive for them to have it?
So what you're saying is that if you make this mistake, the only time you're actually going to notice that the mistake was made is if you audit it. If you want to be, Microsoft hasn't got an AI system out there checking boxes and validating. Would that be a correct
Yes,
phrase?
for internal review, trial preparation, anything like we do this as a part of our engagements. So my company, we come to a customer, we look at the licensing statement, always Microsoft licensing statement, and we immediately pick those things. Good thing about it, Daryl, please correct me because he used to deal with Microsoft, closer to Microsoft sales. I think there's now a 30-day period when you can still cancel the purchase.
Yeah, I think you still can cancel it. I haven't read the small letters, but yes, you still have time to cancel it.
So yeah, you can basically just withdraw the purchase, but you're only given a certain time frame. That time frame passes, you're stuck with those licenses. The only thing you can then do with those licenses during the period of the enterprise agreement is you can, if you divest a part of your business, give them those licenses because then they can use them. So that's a big loss. That's like, so going to my losses bingo. That's waste and shelfware due to human error, licensing complexity, and dodgy sales tactics. Because that's a process gaps. Basically everything that leads to that unfortunate waste of money. Because I've had a conversation with in my country of origin with one of the resellers. And I audited the customer, internally audited, not on Microsoft's behalf. We had an internal review for a customer. And I noticed that they bought 400 Office Professional Plus licenses when they had an enterprise agreement, when they had to buy Office Professional Plus through the enterprise agreement. They bought them through a different type of an agreement. So they just weren't aware. They opened a new production facility somewhere in Siberia, and they bought those 400 something. I could be a bit rusty on the exact number, but it was in hundreds. And then I told that story in one of the kind of like conferences, in the previous days that wasn't online. We had a meetup. We would sit down with other people, drink coffee and just chat about Microsoft licensing. And I told that scary story to the audience in that room. And then there was a guy who said, I sold it to them. And I asked him, did you know that they have an enterprise agreement? He said, yes. And then he said, if they would come to me today and ask to do the same, I would sell it anyway. Because you know what? I don't care. I care about my children. I care about my bonuses. I care about my wife. She needs some dental, whatever, to be done. That's what I care about. They made their mistake. It's not me. I won't stop them. I have no incentive to stop them. And although I still think it's a bit dodgy, I can put myself in his shoes. So make sure it's centralized. Make sure these things are controlled. Daryl, if you want to add anything on this.
No, I'm fine. No, thanks. Let's move on.
The other one, so I've put Azure a bit closer to the beginning of this because I think these are becoming more frequent. So obviously that didn't happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Not using Azure Hybrid Benefits. It's a mistake. It's here you are wasting on savings. You can achieve savings. You can achieve dramatic. It depends. It ranges from 30% to up to 80% in some cases. Depends on what discounts you get. If you're a government entity, you get some crazy discounts like level D minus 45%. Sorry for jumping into Microsoft related lingo. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just bear in mind, there's a thing that's called Azure Hybrid Benefits. If you deploy something to Azure, you can use your existing licenses in Azure. There are strings attached. There are rules that you need to play by the book. There are certain boxes you need to tick. But just what I need you to understand is that don't neglect that thing. Savings are substantial. Combined with so-called reserved instances, it could save, maybe not millions at the moment. It depends on how deep you are in Azure. But the deeper you are there, the more you can save.
So Alex,
yeah.
So do these licenses need to be under an enterprise agreement or CSP or have software assurance to utilize these hybrid rights?
They have to be under software assurance, and you need to fill a specific form. So it doesn't matter what channel you buy them through. They must be under software assurance or an equivalent of software assurance for CSP. I need to check that. So let's just forget about CSP, because you always need to check. It's very complex. But if you have any licenses through MPSA or enterprise agreement, or you still have some open value or anything like that, as long as they are under active maintenance, active support, which is called software assurance in the Microsoft world, you can take them, use them in Azure, get your discounts. Moreover, it is cheaper to buy new subscription licenses, annual subscription licenses, and still assign them to Azure than pay for the same license through Azure itself. I think that's cool. I think that's cool. So this is something that should not be neglected, should not be overlooked. It's a big area to save right now. And again, depends. If you're only spending on Azure 50K, you won't feel it. If you're spending $1 million, 10 million, 100 million on Azure, are you going to feel it big way? So look at that. One of the mistakes that I can see is that companies are moving to Azure and they cancel software assurance on the previous license. We don't need those licenses anymore. That's a big mistake. When you cancel software assurance on your existing licenses, when you renew your enterprise agreement, think about, can I utilize those licenses with renewed software assurance? And remember, you're going to only be paying software assurance if they were perpetual licenses. So very additional saving. That's an additional saving. Can I use them in Azure? What are my Azure plans? But then, fine, you've done that. The second mistake that I'm seeing is people did that. Companies did that. You did that. And then you forgot to click that tick box on the new virtual machines. And so you're paying for these licenses, which you renewed or subscribe to, and you're at the same time still paying for that license through Azure.
So maybe, Alex, what we're looking at a disconnect between the people that are actually using the services within the organization, being probably IT, and procurement, that's actually doing the purchases. So they're not communicating. And because there's no communication between IT and procurement, one doesn't know what the other one's doing and what benefits they have. And that's a loss of money.
Well, there's another thing. So one of the customers, I can remember what happened, is that they wanted to benefit from that. I told them about those benefits. They were very excited about it. That would have saved them up to 400K UK pounds per year. They were very excited about it. They said, "Yeah, we're going to use that. We're going to do that." And then they forgot to give their outsourcers rights, grant them rights to reserve to order reserved instances and to assign their own licenses.
Got it.
And for a few months, it wasn't happening. So I came there with another review. I looked at that and said, wait a second, guys, why are you not using that? Why not using that? By the way, just a bit of I'll digress for a second. So Sonia is asking if this video will be available for watch on demand when we finish this stream. Yes, it will be. Everything that we do on this channel, we don't hide it. It'll stay on the channel. The recording will be available. I'll probably cut the initial 10 minutes of apologies, but you'll be able to watch this video. So if you really have any compelling events right now, you can drop off. Shame to lose you, but if that's what you need to do, then please, by all means. But it's much better to actually have an ability to chat with you. And if you've just joined, and just say hello. Where are you from? And what worries you? So the next point is, which I call tax and optimism. It's Azure commitments. Microsoft salespeople will be pushing that your way very, very, very hard, because for them, that's annuity. That's guaranteed stream of cash. What I see is when you are in the very beginning of your Azure adoption, or if you're just choosing where to go, which way to go, you're not yet in Azure. You're not yet consuming it properly for BAU. You haven't yet transitioned, and you haven't yet had all the issues. You haven't learned from your mistakes. There's a tendency, which I see 100% of cases, is to overestimate how much you will need to consume in Azure, especially in the first year, Then it may, you may catch up, but especially the first year. So I call it tax on optimism. We're optimistic we're going to migrate everything this year. That never happens. So I'm sorry for being blunt, but that never happens. I've never seen it happening. So that's the thing. It is an issue. Don't commit.
Alex, what's the benefit? Sure. You're talking about commitment. What's the benefit of committing? Why should I even commit upfront? Am I getting discounts? Am I getting potentially better terms and conditions? Maybe just use reserved instances. Maybe go to a CSP in regards to having an enterprise agreement, MPSA. What's the benefit?
So the discount on Azure, according to what I know, because I never sell licenses, we usually, when we benchmark something, we look at the current situation and how things are at the moment with that customer or customers in the same industry. So then we can compare. So I recently just asked about it. A reseller guy, is there any discount? He said yes, there's a 20% discount on if you kind of commit up front. So you need to also look at that. Maybe that gives you some benefits.
And can I increase that? Can I increase that commitment? So if I take a small commitment, get the 20%, can I increase that as I go forward?
I don't believe you're going to get discounts on overage.
You're not going to get an overage. So
as far as I know, you only get discount on that upfront commitment.
Okay.
If somebody knows that, please correct me in the chat. Okay. So that's that discount. Obviously, when you evaluate your options, look at that. If you're only unsure by 20%, or we're going to migrate everything or not everything by 20%, maybe it makes sense to commit. Also, that could be a leverage to get discounts on other things. So maybe you're committing for $1 million, but you're getting $2 million discount on Office. It's good, isn't it? So why would Microsoft do that? That's a big question. But then various reasons. So you can use that as a leverage. Some companies do commit. Some companies commit to Azure as a result of a bad audit. They're not paying penalties, but they just say, they sit down at the negotiation table with Microsoft. Microsoft says, let's resolve it somehow. And maybe you can buy our cloud services. They're brilliant. Well, they're brilliant. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Azure is great. So it's a tax on optimism. Always, there's a tendency in human psychology to try and kind of buy things up front because you kind of get a discount. That's why all the mobile operator tariffs are built on that principle. Same here. Be vigilant. Don't be too optimistic, and assess it from the worst case point of view. Do that. If you and I usually just say if there's an option not to commit, do not commit. Do not. If you're not yet in Azure, you never know how that's going to go. At my experience, hundreds of customers with that, not a single one did the migration in the time frame they actually designed it to happen. It always lags. So you lose the money. You never get you're never getting that money back. It's gone. There you go. So what's the type of loss is that? Waste. That's waste. That's just
waste. That's pure waste on shelfware.
Yeah, plus future costs as well, because if you commit for the whole thing. So you lost it. It's gone. What are the reasons? Somehow dodgy sales tax. It's not dodgy, just pushy sales tactics. It's not dodgy, it's just a sales. I mean, they offer you accept it. That's probably the only thing I can think about. And optimism. What is this question mark? I would probably put optimism. Too much optimism. Be a bit pessimistic. Daryl, this one is yours, actually. You told me about the true-up discounts, and that was something that, I've never thought about. It's a wonderful area that's so often overlooked.
Yeah, so what happens most times, especially with enterprise agreements, is that you are so busy negotiating your upfront discounts on your platform, on your server licenses, that you neglect to ask for a discount or even discuss about your future costs. There's also an assumption that if you're receiving a discount on your current purchase, on your 3-year commitment, that discount's going to roll forward onto all of your future true-up costs. That's a misunderstanding or a miscommunication by Microsoft or by the reseller. So you need to really be aware that whatever discounts you negotiate are not going to be automatically rolled into your true-up pricing. If you don't ask for it, you won't receive it. So I think that is the biggest mistake that I see time after time after time. It's neglected. So that's a human error or a misunderstanding or miscommunication by Microsoft or by the reseller. All you need to do is ask for it. As simple as, please provide me with a discount on my true-up pricing.
Yeah, so where do we put this one?
I would say that goes down to a type of loss that's future costs and a missed opportunity for improved. And the reason is many times it's human error. And you know what? Dodgy sales tactics, because nobody really wants to provide future discounts. There could be a reason for that. The reseller or Microsoft might be planning on a big migration implementation that they know is coming on SQL Server or on other products, and they just want to get list price for that.
And nobody's going to just tell you about that unless
nobody's going to tell you about it. Yeah.
Quiet. So big secret about true-up discounts. Now out there on this channel, you can watch it recorded, by the way. Yeah. So the next one, I think we can do it together. But if you want to take this one about, because I've seen this many times, things are being purchased and what the customer gets in the end is a different thing.
Okay. So I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of dislikes of what I'm going to say, but I'm getting too old to care about what people say, so I'll say it anyway. This really comes down to working with, you call them dodgy salespeople, dodgy resellers, is that, for example, I've seen this multiple times. You order an enterprise, SQL Server Enterprise Edition, and your reseller provides you with an invoice for SQL Server Enterprise Edition. We all know the cost is, what's the times, how much? 10?
7. Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Pretty substantial, more than a standard edition. But in the back end, when they go in and they enter into the Microsoft system, the actual licenses allocated, they enter SQL Server Standard Edition. Now, if you don't double check your licensing portal, and you go in and your procurement don't verify the invoice versus the actual entitlement, you'll never know that. It will get lost in the noise. Maybe when you come to the renewal or when you have a audit, something will look out of order, but it will be very difficult to track, especially with large organizations. Mm-hmm. Another thing that you see, you might order a 16-pack core licenses for Windows Server. We're going to talk about that. You get invoice for the 16-pack core licenses. Again, an error by the reseller. They enter 2-pack core licenses into the Microsoft system. They get the money for the 16 cores. You get 2 cores. You under license, and you've paid a huge gap. Going to be, again, very difficult to figure out what went wrong and when it went wrong. So this comes down to dodgy sales tactics. The reseller will, if you do find out, they will say, oh, that's an error. That's a clerical error on our side. Somebody entered it incorrectly. They'll get out of it very easily. Very difficult to prove that it was by malice. But please, it's your responsibility. It's your money.
Yes, check it at every step. What you offered, what you were offered, what you put your signature under could be different. What you ordered, then, that could be your mistake, by the way. I'm not completely dismissing that. Somewhere in the procurement department, there may be somebody who just slipped. I'm not saying that was deliberate. I'm saying just, again, licensing is so complex. People, the majority of people I talk to have no idea that version and edition are 2 different things. So they may even miss it. They may just put an order for SQL Server licenses without checking what edition that was. If I was a reseller, if somebody sent me SQL Server, I would just sell Enterprise. immediately. Why would I self-standard? I would normally, honestly, I would come back and ask, what edition did you mean? But will everybody do that? Are they educated enough? So check. It's your responsibility, as Daryl just said. It's your responsibility to check every single step in this process until you get the actual licenses. Check your licensing statement. Check your Microsoft Business Center for MPSA. Check VLSC for other licensing programs. In CSP, there's a different interface. Always make sure that the whole process was followed up to every single point. Because I work with worldwide markets as well, and I see this in various countries. It's different. So I wouldn't say I've seen deliberate errors in the UK, but I've seen just ridiculous errors in the UK when a customer placed an order for user client access licenses for the entirety of the organization before Office 365. But in the end, they were sold device access licenses, which was entirely not what they wanted. And they were non-compliant for the whole period of 3 years. Microsoft were notified. Microsoft sent a letter saying that's fine. But then again, do you want to be in that position? And by the way, user cal was more expensive than device cal at the time. So things happen. Happen, and losses happen here as well. And the losses here fall in different areas. It could be audit penalties because you're incorrectly licensed. It could be waste and shelfware because you didn't need that edition. It could be, I would say, okay, let's just limit it to these two. And the main issue here is process gaps. You need a process. And that, by the way, that process, if you are here from procurement, and I know there are a few procurement people watching right now, if you're in procurement, that process you can control yourselves. You don't need IT to help that. So as long as IT have approved all the things, technically, yes, we need that. Then it's in your hands. Just make sure you check all the. I'll rewind back to the one slide. You check everything at every single step, that you're getting exactly the same thing that the IT want. Okay, next one. So not getting any things in writing again happens so often. I mean, obviously, the smaller you are, the fewer things you'll get as concessions, or maybe fewer discounts. But the bigger you are, the more complex you are. The more complex your agreements with Microsoft, the more complex your negotiation. Daryl, I think it's another one I'm happy to give to you.
So I love this. I love it. Why? Because it happens again and again and again. It's a mistake that negotiators in general keep making. Why? Because they negotiate for 2, 3, sometimes 6 months. Very complex deals. A lot's been said. A lot of verbal promises, emails have been sent out, various proposals, additions, and everything's agreed upon. And you're waiting for the vendor, Microsoft in this case, and this is actually right for everybody. And the vendor provides an official agreement. The agreement is 30, 40, 50 pages long sometimes, various pieces to it, enrollments, amendments. And one of the biggest mistakes is that nobody sits down and starts comparing all the promises or the proposals or the emails to the actual agreement. And there's always a discrepancy. It could be in standard terms and conditions, legal terms and conditions. It could be for audit rights that you negotiated or promised. For example, I've seen cases where Microsoft has promised not to audit for the next 12 months because all kinds of migrations are happening, moving to Azure, and they tell the customer, well, we're not going to audit you in the next 12 months. But in the actual agreement, it doesn't appear. So there's a gap there where potentially, if you are audited within 12 months, nobody's going to cancel that audit and nobody's going to remember that verbal promise or that promise by email. And it's the same for true-up cost that we discussed previously. If you have promised that you're going to get a discount, a future discount on your CIS, on your Windows Server and System Center licenses, but it's not part of your final customer price sheet, it doesn't exist. So what I recommend is that you stop trusting and you start checking. Because even if you've got a very open, trustworthy partner in front of you, it doesn't mean that they've crossed all their T's and put everything and integrated into the agreement.
Thank you. By the way, we have a good question here. Will these slides be shared? Yes. Yes, we'll put them in the PDF and put them on LinkedIn to be downloaded from the I think from the SAMexpert page, maybe from my private feed as well. So we'll see. But we're gonna make this a downloadable as well. Thanks, Daryl. So well, and from my point of view, this comes to simple thing. Process gaps. It's just a process gap. You need to have a process. You need to make sure you have things under control, and you need to make sure that whatever you agree, you get in writing. And when I say in writing, I mean as an addendum to the actual agreement, not anything else. Addendum to the agreement, because that's the only legal form you can deal with. Right. So going to licensing, because well, the first promise was to actually talk about 10 licensing mistakes. So this one is in between licensing and procurement. So Microsoft famously decided to sell core licenses in 2 core packs, and after that in 16 core packs. Confused the hell out of people. There are various consultancies that produce all the ELPs with 2 core packs in the ELPs. There are other consultancies who religiously stick to, by the way, I think that's what I recommend doing, to just single cores, because one license is 1 core. It's not a pack. One license is 1 core. But since certain time, I just decide, you know what, I'm going to give you 2 numbers in single license and then 2 core packs, because every time people, especially people that are aware and good resellers, they come back and ask, Alex, is that number in single cores or core packs? Because we want to place the correct order. But I've seen cases, and I stopped one purchase like that recently, when I told the customer they're short by 122, something like that, I'm making up a number right now, but say 122 single cores. And they placed an order without reading the commentary. They placed an order for 122 double core packs. They would have lost that money. Fortunately, I stopped the purchase. I just double checked what they sent me an order, said, can you double check? I double checked it. I said, no, it must be half of that. So please don't mix it up. So all the licensing is in single cores. Licenses are assigned. There are certain rules, minimum of 16 cores per computer, minimum of 8 cores per processor for Windows Server, different rules for SQL Server. So there are certain rules, but the whole conversation in Microsoft product terms, and that's your licensing Bible. There's nothing else. All the guides, leaflets, explanations, anywhere, they're not official. When you're going to be having any disputes with Microsoft, it's going to be all about product terms. Product terms only talk about single core licenses. Forget the packs. Packs is how you buy them. Single cores is how you license them. Please understand that, and please make sure when somebody tells you you are short by N cores, ask them if that is for 2 core, if they give you the number in 2 core packs or single cores. Because you have two risks here. Either you'll buy too few or you'll buy too many. Make sure you understand that.
Alex, I want to ask you a question. If you had to make a recommendation now, and we're looking at buying license packs, either 2 core packs or 16 core packs.
Yeah, I'll put them on screen. I know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. What would be your recommendation? Because I know that people some are buying 16, some are buying 2 cores, some are mixing 16 and 2 cores. Isn't that causing a lot of confusion and potentially a huge amount of loss of revenue, of budget going forward? I know who's making money on it, and I also know who's losing money. What would be your recommendation?
So it's going to be a long answer. And why I need to start with this slide. So for those who are interested, I have a post on LinkedIn. I have a video on this channel, pretty recent, which is called Truth About 16 Core Packs. So if you haven't watched it, and even if you have, can somebody in the chat in the next minute answer this question? I'll keep talking for that minute, but if you type an answer, I'll be really grateful. This question that's on the screen right now: how many 16 core packs are required here for these two servers? There are two servers, so these two boxes are two servers. Each server has two processors. Each processor has 12 cores, so each server has 24 cores in total. Obviously, above the 16 core minimum that you require to assign to one server. How many 16 core packs you need to license these two servers? Do you know? Yeah, I'm waiting. I mean, maybe somebody will be brave enough to answer this question. It's not an easy one. I mean, it's easy if you know licensing, but if you don't know licensing, this thing can confuse the hell out of you. If you're in procurement and you have to deal with this is very confusing. Okay, the minute has passed. The correct answer here is you need 3. And then again, that's not the correct answer. The correct answer, you need 48 cores. That is the correct answer. So the question itself is wrong. But that is something that in certain locations, in certain resellers, in certain countries, that is used to sell too many licenses to customers, because that's how they formulate it. You need at least one 16-core pack, and because you have 24 cores, you need two 16-core packs. That is bullshit. Excuse my Russian here, because that's not how it works. Product terms talk about single cores. You need 24 cores, and then how you buy them. If you want to buy them in 16-core packs, by all means, buy them in 16-core packs. You need 3 here in this. That's the answer. You need to buy 3 16-core packs. But answering now Daryl's question, what do I recommend doing? Unless there's an incentive or a huge discount on 16-core packs, I recommend buying 2 core packs just to avoid that question entirely. Because take in some places, when a license is sold together with say legally required licensing contract, what they do is they just put 16-core license in the contract, and that makes that license unbreakable. To avoid that, to avoid even, just some people come back and say, Alex, that's your interpretation. Well, it's not my interpretation. I'm just quoting product terms. I'm not even interpreting. You don't have to. It's very black and white there. So whoever tells you otherwise, send them my way. Let me talk to them.
Because Alex, so let's make it simple. Let's make a recommendation.
2 core packs. Yeah.
So just buy 2 core packs. All you need is don't buy 16 core. When things get complicated in life, I take the simple route. That's my personal view.
I agree.
My opinion is hugely complex. It's going to make your life very difficult, and you're ultimately going to lose money. So why don't you stick to 2 core packs for all your licenses, Windows and SQL and everything else? And in this case, you need 48 cores. Just buy 24 2 core packs. It's simple math. 24 by 2, it's 48. Don't get yourself in a mess. Take the simple option. That's what I would do.
So I'm going to be very blunt and heavy here, because the only reason I started talking about this, and I did a post, I did a video, I'm talking about it today, is because I have to right now fight off a few cases at the same time due to dodgy sales tactics. That is, guys, that thing happens, at least in my experience, due to dodgy sales tactics. And on the customer side, because of the licensing complexity. Then again, if you've never dealt with Microsoft licensing, I am sorry for a pure procurement person that is poor procurement person that has to deal with this, that is thrown their way. She's sitting there and she was given all this, and she's told that there's a minimum of 16 cores, therefore you need to buy 2 16-core packs. How do you deal with that? So if you happen to be lucky and watch this video, just remember that just buy it in 2 core packs. Yeah. And the other rule is, if you're forced to buy that in 16 core packs, please remember they are breakable to single cores. Please
Good
remember that.
recommendation. Good recommendation.
Yeah. So moving on. Misunderstanding client access licenses and client access. So just a bit of kind of like backstory for those who are not familiar with Microsoft licensing, because this is something that I'll try and explain. So by default, the default rule, there may be exceptions, but the default rule is in the Microsoft world, when you buy a license for any server product, you need also to buy server access licenses. There are exceptions, as I said, there may be exceptions. But if you don't know if there is an exception, well, say good exception is SQL Server. If you buy it with core licenses, you do not need client access licenses. That's an exception. So client access licenses are not only kind of, it seems to be simple. You know, I made so many mistakes with CALs, I just forgot to calculate them, for instance, because you think, oh, CAL is something simple. It's just a client access license. It's just a license that you buy for every user, or for every device, or a mixture, depending on the circumstances. It seems simple, and you keep kind of continue forgetting them. So many things happen. So like that story that I just told you, that when the customer placed an order for user CALs and they were given device CALs, and that made them entirely non-compliant for the whole period of 3 years, because they didn't want to rebuy the license. They already bought them through an enterprise agreement. So one of the things that are very complex in the Microsoft licensing world is not every client access license is bundled with enterprise agreement packages, platform products. So there used to be core CALs and enterprise CALs. In various countries, people are still reluctant to go to Office 365. Therefore, they still continue buying those core CALs and enterprise CALs. Please remember, and that is your audit risk. So that is not saving. That is your audit risk. That is cost avoidance, if I may. Risk management. SQL Server CAL and remote desktop CAL for your work from home users, so they can access your service from I'm sitting here, my server somewhere else. I need remote desktop client access license to be eligible, to be compliant to access that server from a remote location. So these two are never bundled. So please remember that. It's a silly thing, often overlooked, and Microsoft didn't make it easy. And I forgot about it, but Daryl reminded me there was a specific bundle many years ago that actually included SQL Server CAL. And many people who were still doing licensing at that time, they kept thinking that it's included. It's not. It's a separate thing. Don't forget about that. That if you forget about that, if you think everything came with my bundle, you're going to be non-compliant. And if you are an M365 modern day enterprise agreement subscriber, then M365 comes with an equivalent of an enterprise CAL bundle. Again, these two are not in M365. You have to buy them separately. You don't need Windows Server CAL anymore. You don't need Exchange Server CAL anymore. Skype for Business, SharePoint. No need. Add some system center components. These two are still not bundled. These two are still required as a separate purchase. That won't cost you. So obviously, because you have to buy them, that won't save you money, but that will save you from future headache. If you have any audits, if you have any reviews, make sure you pay attention to that. And I even created 2 slides for CALs, because there's another question here, which is now talking about money saving and efficiency. Customers often ask, shall we just buy current version CALs because we're not planning to upgrade? We're going to stay on the current version or the previous version of Windows Server or Exchange. Well, Exchange is in the cloud now, so we stay on the old version of Windows Server. Do we need to also buy? Do we need to have that upgrade right on client access licenses? Now, let me dive in into the economics of Microsoft licensing. So when Microsoft license may be bought without software assurance. You can't do that in an enterprise agreement, but you can decide and buy them through MPSA. Open license is not available anymore. MPSA is a good example. You can buy them through MPSA. So it's a different kind of a Microsoft agreement, different rules, different limitations, different rules of the game. So in an enterprise agreement, you always buy them with software assurance. And some customers, they would ask that question, why would we want to pay for software assurance? It's a valid question. If we're not upgrading, then my response is, from my experience, I would rather always have software assurance on client access licenses, because the version of a client access license must always follow the version of even a single, and I'm saying this, you can't be half pregnant in licensing, single instance of Windows Server. Somebody in IT, clever person, understood now that Windows Server 2019 provides better services, it works better, it has better user experience, and they upgraded one instance just to try it, and they deployed it into production. It's already there on the network. All your 50,000 client access licenses must immediately be upgraded to that version. So the world is no more like it was when it was, about Windows XP, when we could stay with one version for 10, 12, 20 years, one version of software. The release cycle is shorter. The support cycle is shorter. And look at the Windows versions. There were only 3 years of a gap. And I see companies upgrading from 2012 to 2019. So that sort of jump. But many upgrading from they upgraded to 2016, now they're upgrading to 2019. 3-year gap. Now, through an enterprise agreement, you pay 25-27% per year of the cost of the perpetual license as a software assurance OPEX payment. Why wouldn't you? Because if you have only 3 years in the release cycle, and then the next version of Windows Server is supposed to be released this year, so there's going to be 2 years of release cycle. Suddenly, continuing to pay for maintenance becomes half as expensive as repurchasing the entirety of your client access licenses for the entirety of the organization. So I would say my advice, it's a safer bet. It depends on so many factors. How quick is your IT, how quickly they adopt new technologies. But please remember, so you can't be half pregnant. One copy in production, the entirety of the client access licenses must be upgraded. Unless you are on M365, then you get that with already as sort of like software assurance equivalent. If you are old cows, pre-Office 365, it's a very safe bet to stay on software assurance. Lots of risks to avoid. Compliance, sudden expense, because that comes all of a sudden. Everybody is absolutely calm, sitting there and thinking, oh, we have all the costs, it's fine. We comply. We just had an audit. One day, one event, one upgrade, you're non-compliant. So that's it. So everything, triple check your LPs, triple check your recommendations. But then when you decide not to renew USA, that will be only if you switch to Office 365. Well, in that case, you'll probably be guided through that. But if you bought those licenses through MPSA, people who negotiate your enterprise agreement with you, they may not even know about it. So please be aware. You get M365, you may cancel software assurance on almost all of your cars, except for remote desktop cars and SQL Server. Hope it wasn't very complicated. So if it's complicated, come to my private message. We can have a discussion. I'll guide you through it. And if you want to look at your like organization's current Microsoft licensing estate, I'll just a quick reminder, shameless plug. I'm a business. I provide these services. If you trust me, if you think I can help, you know where to find me. So, Daryl, you wanted to ask a question, I think.
No, I think that it's very clear. Just to summarize, what I'm taking away from this, if I have a full infrastructure and all I do is upgrade one server to the next version, I need to make sure that my CALs are on software assurance and that they match the server edition, because that's what determines the version of the CAL. As simple as that. Recommendation, keep software assurance on your CALs, because your server environment is moving up and down all the time, usually up. Don't be uncompliant. Stick with software assurance.
Yeah, that's the recommendation on CALs. You can choose to go a different way if you know how to calculate your upgrade plans. But we're saying this is a safer bet in many regards. And I will probably skip the losses part here, because that was more about recommendations of how to avoid some unpleasant surprises. I would say, well, audit fees are probably audit penalties is the thing that we're looking at here. But then again, good planning is cost avoidance. So if you plan to upgrade, if IT tells you we can't guarantee we won't upgrade in 2 years, then keeping a say is actually a cost avoidance exercise. Hope that falls through because it's a bit complex. Development and production. Here we go. An old question. You may be in an audit situation or a review situation, and you may be working with an LSP or an independent. Many companies will raise this question: why do you mix your developer licenses and production licenses on the same hardware in the same clusters? Like virtualized, hyper-converged, complex infrastructure in your IT that you have no even idea how that works, but it's virtualized. Okay, you've probably heard the term virtual machine. So that is a very often disputed point. And why I'm bringing it here is, firstly, just to give you a warning, if somebody tells you, no, you can't have non-production in the production cluster, yes, you can. If somebody tells you, no, you need to buy production licenses for all these machines, you can't use MSDN, yes, you can use MSDN. You may use MSDN. You don't need production licenses. The definitions are clear, and I have it here on the slide, almost. And because they're almost clear, people still think that what I say is an interpretation. Then I stand my ground. It's not. I've been through the whole process from 2014 up to today, watched back, what happened in history, what happened in, I think it was October 2017, 2014. I don't remember exactly what, I think it was October 2014 when Microsoft clarified this, but they didn't do it 100%. They didn't clarify it to a single point. But then again, if you add A and B, if you don't listen to what I say, if you don't listen to what LSP tells you, your other clever consultants, you just go there and read it yourself. Just put it in front of you. You'll conclude the same. You may mix that. So that it could be due to misinterpreting, could be due to dodgy sales tactics again, because, well, why not sell you more licenses? Good idea, isn't it? Why not punish you for perceived non-compliance? You're such an easy prey because you've got no idea, and you listen to that advice with an open, like mouth. Oh wow! But the advice here actually is, I wouldn't argue. I think what you can do is, I would advise you, if you can do that, to go back to your IT tomorrow and ask them do we have this situation? Do we run non-production machines and production machines on the same clusters? And then ask them, may we separate, dedicate, consolidate, put things into different buckets, just to avoid that whole almost clear conversation? Because there's still a very tiny, very narrow, but there's still a room for interpretation. There's a room for an argument. Don't leave that room for an argument. Don't leave that room for an argument. Then again, if you're in that situation when you're told you can't do that, yes, you can. Don't pay extra money. But strategically, move them away from each other. Have non-production in one area, production in another, not even in the same cluster. And now I'm going to tell one very technical term, not even using host affinity. Just separate completely. But it's better be safe than sorry in this regard. So this is, again, I probably too often say dodgy sales tactics, but that's again, the reason why I'm raising this again is I had another customer we had to protect from a claim that they had to buy extra licenses.
I think it's just a license, it comes down one of the reasons I would say, Alex, is licensing complexity.
It is.
To get into the understanding that licensing terms and conditions are not identical for production and non-production. First of all, that's complexity. That the rules of engagement are not the same for production and non-production. So as you said, and I think that's a very valid point, is that to keep away from that complexity, just separate environments. If they are separated, your life is very, very simple. If they are mixed, you are in for, again, additional expenses, and for potential audit claims.
Well, I think the biggest loss you can get here is losing your time, because that's a non-replenishable resource. You can probably earn that money back. You can
I think we're going back to, Alex, I think we're going back to what we said, simple. When things get complicated, keep them simple. I think really this is another example. Keep it simple. Separate your environments. Don't get into areas of complexity that you don't know how to deal with.
Yep. Protect yourself from it. SQL Server Unlimited Virtualization. So another licensing thing. For those who don't know, quick introduction again. So if you license your hardware hosts where you run your virtual machines with SQL Server Enterprise at the host level, so-called, just counting the number of cores and the processors, then you can run unlimited with software assurance. Then you can run an unlimited number of other SQL servers in that cluster. So I'm yet to see a configuration where that is 100% effective. No questions asked, very, very cost effective. I can draw you an ideal picture where you have to run multiple SQL Server Enterprise instances in unlimited virtualization scenario. What I find is I had some customers where from time to time switching to licensing per host for unlimited virtualization was cheaper. It was a very tiny saving. Always assess this, because more often I deal with cases when a customer, just to avoid all this headache with micromanagement of licenses, would go for that route. But what they end up with is running just a few instances of SQL Server Standard, which is 7 or 10 times cheaper than Enterprise in virtual machines. Basically, to achieve any efficiency in that configuration, you need to pack this whole cluster with just databases. So don't fall to that trap. Avoid that, calculate it carefully, and I would say a safer bet here would be to license SQL per virtual machine, just as individual virtual machines. Maybe in your unique configuration, there's a case to actually create a dedicated cluster for SQL Server. In that case, because I've dealt with that, we did create dedicated clusters with our customers. We guided them through that. As long as you keep your eye on all your process and your new deployed databases end up on that cluster, you have to actually look at the IT processes, all the IT processes. So deployment and application support. They all must know that databases must reside on this dedicated database cluster. If that falls apart, and that's what happens, in 2-3 years it falls apart, you lose all the benefits of unlimited virtualization, and you end up paying more than you would have paid for individual virtual machines. So it does depend on the hardware. The more powerful the hardware is, actually, the less is the effect, funny enough, because you have to cover lots of cores. And in virtual machines, you probably will only license 4 or 8-ish. So compare that with, say, 48 core hosts. Why would you? If you only run 2 machines, you need 8 cores compared to 48. That's a very simple example. So always calculate the effect up front before jumping into that thing. I had a customer with a huge...
So Alex, if I can interrupt, this comes down to planning. So basically what you're saying is that don't get your DBAs to manage the architecture without talking to procurement, because DBAs will do what's right for them. They don't take into consideration any licensing or cost, potential cost increase. They just look at what's potentially the best option for the organization, or what's the easiest to manage. So again, this comes down to communication. We spoke about this before. It's between procurement, IT management, and the DBAs or the SQL Server team. It's about everybody understanding that there's a cost for architecture, and there's a cost for machines that have multiple cores that you might not need. So it's a team effort, and it's education. So I don't think there are any DBAs on this call. Maybe they are, but I can assume they're not. And DBAs usually don't come onto licensing live webinars or join your, at least those that I know don't really love licensing. So they're not even aware of the complexity and of the cost. So it's actually IT plus procurement responsibility to educate. So if you don't educate, if you're from the IT and from procurement or from SAM, sorry, forgot about SAM, it's your responsibility to educate. Don't expect a DBA to optimize your licensing environment for SQL Server. They won't even know what you're talking about. And I think it comes down to education and communication within the team.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you here. It's about the process. It's about the process, and the losses that you get here basically are all in the waste and shelfware category. You bought those licenses, they're not cost effective. You're losing money, and you may have saved if you just went and licensed, individual virtual machines. Comes down to planning, comes down to architecture, comes down to working together as a single team and adhering to the rules of that deployment, what you agreed as a design, adhering to the design that was agreed by the entirety of the team. So we're getting close to the end, actually. So this is the last one, but there'll be something in the very end. So please stay with us. Which is also a reason to pay too much is not respecting the bundle discounts. And one of those is I see companies buying Windows Server and System Center separate licenses, where even if you buy them not through Server and Cloud enrollment in an enterprise agreement, not through an enterprise agreement, you still get about 5 to 10% discount on the bundle. It's a good idea. System Center is now present everywhere. Just trying to remember. In the last 5 years, every company I dealt with had System Center controlling every single thing. So it's there. It's already there. Windows Server, yes, they run Windows Server. Why would you buy them separately? Ask if there's a bundle. There is a bundle. I'm telling you that. That can save you money. That's your saving. Moreover, when you renew your enterprise agreement, you can consolidate Windows Server and System Center licenses into a single core infrastructure server license, so you can be saving on maintenance, on support. Moreover, these core infrastructure server licenses could be used in Azure with Azure Hybrid Benefits. And data center licenses can even have dual running rights, where you can use them on premises and in Azure. So look at the bundles. Bundles are cheaper. And in some cases, especially with the recent very dodgy play of, with the price list. Dodgy from my point of view, you can call it good sales tactics. Microsoft increased prices on components of Microsoft 365. And in certain cases, it may be even cheaper to buy the M365 bundle. They're pulling you into the bundle, which then can go up in price. So assess it from various points of view. Maybe you don't need that. But look at the bundles as well, because bundles are, by design, bundles are cheaper than separate components. So that's a way to avoid costs. By the way, for instance, if you host everything that you have in a third-party data center, there are also bundles in SPLA. If you're paying for client access to, at the same time, Exchange, Skype for Business, and SharePoint in the provider's data center, you outsource that, and they charge you just for those licenses as a part of their services. There's also a bundle, productivity suite bundle, which is discounted and heavily discounted. I think discount is about 40%. So look at that. That comes down to a simple thing called licensing complexity. That is just licensing complexity. You're not always aware of that. Somebody didn't tell you. You learn it from some independents who tell you that. You learn it from a good LSP that uses that as a leverage for something else. It's good. Learn that. Remember, there are bundles, not for everything, but you can get discounts to those bundles. There were a few things that didn't make it today. We had a very long list actually, which we're not covering. But I'll keep them here on this slide. I'll keep it in the downloadables, which you'll be able to get from the SAMexpert community page on LinkedIn. and probably from my feed as well. So yeah, but I'll just go through them quickly. I don't know. I'll just read from the screen. So Windows 10 VDI licensing mistakes. Very quick, very like blitz thing. Windows 10 in virtual infrastructure does not require Windows licenses. Don't buy them. You need to buy different licenses. Or maybe you don't need to buy anything. Depends. But don't. I once stopped the purchase of 1,000 Windows 10 licenses in a large provider because they thought you need to buy separate Windows 10 licenses for virtual machines. No, you don't. They don't consume Windows 10 license. They can consume a different type of license. Second, Project Visio and Office working from home. So that comes to non-compliance area. This is not about savings. This is about cost avoidance and avoiding future risks. So old products that are not Office 365 ones, if they deployed for your working from home employees, they require licenses per each end device. How you count them is a mystery. I'm saying here, avoid that, remove that, give them Office 365 licenses instead, because the penalties could be in millions. Mixing up versions and additions. And I'm going to pick up everybody on that. Daryl, excuse me, I'm going to pick you up if you do that sleep as well. So it's very important to differentiate when you talk about additions. They cost differently. So addition is how much it costs and how many features it has. Version is when it was released. Horizontals and verticals. Don't mix them up because what sometimes happens is, I told you in the very beginning, somebody just places an order for SQL Server. You must be absolutely precise. Order for SQL Server standard. SQL Server data center. That is the addition. Don't forget about that, please. So giving away too much data to auditors, that probably deserves a separate live. But if you have an audit, if you're required to submit certain data, make sure you have somebody who's independent and maybe an outsider to your company, to check the data that you're submitting. Give it to your security guys. Let them look at the data, so you don't give away too much information. Some things, auditors don't need IP addresses, for instance, but they do need server names. And if you obfuscate that, you need to obfuscate it professionally so they can make sense of that data. Otherwise, they'll come back and say, you know what, give us a data that is not encrypted. Give away too much and you'll have to fight back later. So careful with that. Unawareness of free SQL Server instances. So normally in a SQL Server estate in an organization, about 25%, sometimes more, of SQL Server instances can be discounted, sometimes up to 50%, due to, I think, about 12 reasons where you can have a discounted or free instance of SQL Server. Just counting every single SQL Server without taking that into account, that is your waste of money. So when you do true-up exercises, when you renew, your SQL Server estate must be assessed by somebody who knows what they're doing. That can save you roughly, on average, 25% of all the SQL Server license costs. Because it could be bundled, it could be free, it could be developer, it could be passive. As I said, 12 reasons to discount SQL Server. And the sixth one is, again, probably requires like a long training. And by the way, talking about trainings, from August to November, we're going to run a series of trainings here on this channel, 8 trainings, 2 hours each, after which we'll give everybody who attended them and registered an opportunity to get a certificate, pass an exam, get a certificate, and get a digital badge. So please stay tuned. Please subscribe to this channel. Please subscribe to this channel's LinkedIn page because we're going to be announcing that stuff as closer we get to August. Things will clarify more and more, but the framework will stay. It starts on the 4th of August. So what I was going to say is that thing about perpetual licenses probably even requires an advanced training because you can't just dismiss all your existing licenses. You can't just dismiss all your legacy license and say, you know what, we're just going to, we're just going to care about what we get through an enterprise agreement. There may be substantial savings, substantial cost avoidance if you still may use your perpetual licenses, which are not under any other obligations or, which do not contradict enterprise agreement terms and conditions. You may still use them. I still have customers where 75% of their estate with SQL Server is covered with their legacy license because they haven't upgraded them. They keep running old versions of SQL and they still have the old licenses, which may still be used the product is end of life. License is never end of life. It is perpetual. If they forgot about those licenses, they would be paying 4 times more for the same SQL Server estate. Even with the server and cloud enrollment discounts, that would never cover that loss from forgetting and neglecting the existing licensing estate. So, as I said, use somebody to assess your licensing estate who know what they're talking about. So, on that fantastic note, we'll leave some time to, thank you for coming. We'll leave some time for questions. I hope we can get maybe 1 or 2 questions here. So, I don't know, Daryl, if you want to add a few words whilst we, hopefully maybe getting questions from the audience.
So first of all, I want to just thank you. It's been very enlightening, Alex. I learned quite a few things today, so thank you for that. I'm sure that the audience has also been educated. I just want to, from my perspective, say that it comes down to a lot of communication within the organization, communication with Microsoft and with your LSP. Only trust yourself or trust somebody that you work for or work with that is not benefiting from the sales of licensing. That's always been something that I've seen over the years. And double check everything. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars per agreement. It comes down to millions. So I know sometimes it seems like small money because I've got a $3, $4, $5 million agreement a year, sometimes even larger agreements, of course, larger the organization. And people neglect $10,000 here, $20,000 there. It's a lot of money. You wouldn't throw it away if it was your money. So don't throw it away towards Microsoft or LSP. That's my takeaway from this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. I will repeat the questions that we had during the cast. The first one was, will you be able to watch it later? Yes. So this will just, I'll close this stream now in a few minutes, and this will just stay on the channel. I'll do all the tweaks, proper thumbnails, descriptions, and all that tomorrow. Hopefully, if I've got time, at least in the next week, I'll put the chapters in, so people will be able to skip. The majority of the recent videos on this channel, they have chapters where you can skip to the part that most interests you. So yes, this will be available. It'll be on the channel. Repeating this question again, will the slides be shared? Yes, they will be. Stay tuned. Stay in touch, and you'll be able to download the PDF with these advice, hopefully valuable to you. And yeah, that is it for today. Thank you, Daryl. It's a pleasure having you here. It keeps the conversation flowing. It's not just me talking, to a camera lens, looking at all our listeners and viewers. Always good to have guests like you with your knowledge and your experience. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Same with knowledge of licensing.
Thank you, everybody.